Hey, I'm Molly Sims.
And I'm Emese Gormley. We're two girls obsessed with one thing, beauty.
And by that, we mean everything that makes you look
And feel
beautiful.
We're calling on our favorite health experts, industry insiders, and friends to answer all your beauty questions.
With a drink in hand.
Definitely with a drink in hand.
You're listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims.
Oh my God, Emese, do you remember our dating days? Remember you used to write my texts?
Oh my God. I think I wrote all of Stuber's texts initially.
We, on our way here this morning, she was like, holy fuck, I've been here before. Remember, we won't say his name.
Yes.
The one that you broke up with because his nail
his toenail was
toenail touched your...
His toenail touched my calf and I wanted to just die.
Yeah.
Kenna, it looks like she's going to puke over there. Anyhow.
But we did survive. We got married.
We would not survive in today's dating world.
We would not survive in today's dating world. The red flags, the ghosting, the apps.
The apps are the death of dating.
And I have to say, a lot of my friends, they've not survived it. A lot of them are getting divorced. A lot of them are like, I'm dating, I'm having sex, I'm having a great time. This is miserable. This is awful. But it's in the past, and maybe the fires, maybe COVID, maybe just that's the age. It's like more and more people are calling it quits. We're still with our loved ones so far, right?
So far, there's no divorce in our future.
No divorce. But if there were divorce in our future, we would be talking to this dating expert. And we are very happy to have her on today. She's friends with Kat and Nat. She's a fellow Torontian.
Torontonian. I've got my fellow Canadian here.
Dr. Kimberly Moffit is one of our leading relationship therapists. She's a dating expert. She's got 300,000 social followers. She shares bite-sized, research-backed advice to her millions of followers on TikTok and Instagram. You navigate love, you navigate heartbreak, and everything in between. We love that you came on. A lot of our friends are starting to go through this cycle, which is weird because everybody's, getting married, having babies, and then
divorce,
the D word. But we did want to take a little bit of a deep dive into dating after divorce, finding love at any age, why Gen Z is delaying marriage, and the red flags that you truly kind of can't ignore. Kimberly Moffit, we are so excited. And you can ask my producer, Rosie Cummings. This was the most asked for episode, correct? It was. People are back on the hunt.
People are divorce curious. You know how people say they're sober curious? I think a lot of people are divorce curious, which tells you the state of a lot of marriages.
Yeah. But more important, we're in our 40s and our 50s, and a lot of our friends are like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming on, because we did really want an expert, because I think to Emese's point, people are divorce curious.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, how did you even get into this field? But secondly, kind of walk us through when it's time.
When do you know you're ready?
When do you know it's time?
Well, thank you so much for having me on too. I'm so excited to be here. I totally get why this is the most requested topic. I feel like information has spread so fast now that we have TikTok and now that we have social media, that people are learning so much about what their options are, and it's changing the dating game entirely. So this topic is so relevant, and I think that's why you're probably having so many people ask about it. For me, I feel like this topic resonates with me personally so much because as somebody with a PhD in psychology, I built my business in the healthcare and relationship space. I have clinics in Toronto. And then kind of blowing up on TikTok and being part of that zeitgeist of what people are talking about in the dating and relationship scene. I feel like I'm kind of one of the first people to hear about what people are thinking about and talking about. And now I also feel like I have personal experience in the space, because as of last year, I'm also separated after a 17-year relationship. And so I feel like like I can empathize with so many women who are going through this from a professional and personal perspective, because I've seen so many women go through it. And I've also had my own experiences. So definitely this resonates.
Well, thank you for sharing, first of all, because I know it's not easy. I think a lot of women are, I think to your point, I think they feel like they have more choices. Like they're not just stuck in this for the next 5, 10, 15 years that have kind of pushed everything forward. But how do you know? I mean, you can base it on your personal experience with your separation, but how does someone how do we get there?
Yeah, what's the breaking point, literally?
The breaking point. Actually, it's funny. I remember talking to a client about this one time, and she was like, how do I know when it's time for a divorce?
Because that's what everybody says. How do I know?
And one of the things I've heard time and time again is, you know when it's the only thing you can think about. And it's funny because someone gave me that advice when I was like, how do I know if it's time to have a baby? You know, like I was like, how do I know if I'm ready? And they're like, you'll know if it's the only thing you can think about. And I think divorce is very similar where, you know, it's one thing to entertain a fantasy of like, oh, what would it be like if I had my freedom back, or if I could go out dating again? That's a completely different thing. And that's totally normal, by the way, if you're married and you have kids and you're kind of in the drudgery. But to actually know you're ready for a divorce, that's really serious, and it's a life altering event, and it changes so much. So I think, you know, people that I know who have successfully divorced have gone through many stages of trying and problem solving and communicating with their partner and going to therapy. And one day, like the classic thing I've heard is that they reach a point where they just have like a watershed moment, or the partner says something that they say, oh, okay, like it's never going to get better. And that's when they
kind of have their aha moment.
An aha moment, yeah.
You're divorced, right? You're in it, and now it becomes not only the D word of divorce, but you're also the other D word, dating.
Right.
So whole new world. I saw a friend of mine. I was like, I'm so sorry. She was like, are you kidding me? I'm fabulous. This is amazing. I'm like, wait, what is happening in the past month, right? Like, I think, you know, because it's a scary thing. I think, you know, my other girlfriend, she was like, you know, at first she was like, I just don't know. I'm like taking it slow. And now she's kind of like gorilla. She was like, I can do this. Like, it's not so bad.
Of course you can. It's not so bad. And I think that's also part of life where, you know, things change, people change. There's no guarantees in life. We change jobs, we change homes, our families change. And I also think, you know, after everything I've learned about love and relationships, love changes, right? And so it's not ever something, you know, if you're thinking about divorce or if you're divorced yourself, there's nothing to feel guilty about. You know, we can go through many different relationships and loves in our lives, and that's completely normal. And so that's always been my philosophy, is that nothing's really good or bad, but the roles that we have in society and the way marriage is positioned makes it seem like, oh, if you get divorced, it's bad, or marriage is something to be preserved. But
I think a lot of times too, I mean, Molly and I both got married later, right? We weren't, you know, in our 20s or even early 30s. And I think when I look back to who I was at 25, right? Which is, I have friends who got married around 25, 26, 27, had their first babies by the time they were 30. We change so much.
So much.
And
I cannot imagine marrying the guy I met at 30. Even 35.
And I think that's part of it, right? Is that like we evolve so much as women. And I think that, you know, who we become at 45 versus who we were at 25 is so different. And I think a lot of these men, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of men want their wives to stay who they were at 25.
And not who they've evolved to be.
Right. And well, that's impossible, right? Because we're
tough.
human beings and we're growing and learning and changing. And
I also think like, you know, the love dissipates, right? For whatever reason, good or bad, you're both two great people. They're just not great together.
Yeah, and that's okay. And you can be great together for a time. And then one day, you know what? You're not. And that's also okay.
What do you think the biggest mindset shift people need to make to re-enter the dating world after divorce?
I think is actually not to call it the dating world. Because calling it the dating world is really scary, and it makes it seem like this high pressure situation when I think every day we're just out in the world, and we meet people, and some people are really great energy and some people are not great energy and we don't vibe with them. And so I think just putting this pressure on yourself of, I need to enter the dating world and like date for marriage, I think that's a really scary thing. It would be like saying, I'm going to start making friends so that I can have a best friend. Right. It's like, no, that happens organically when you're meeting people and you vibe with them. And so I think this concept of like getting back on the apps or doing something that's really high pressure that makes you uncomfortable is not the way to go. I think it's more just looking at it holistically. Like when you're in Starbucks, don't have your head in your phone, actually look around and like see who might be there, have an open mind when you're at events and at parties and with friends. And that's what changes your mindset.
Emese is the biggest, she will talk about it, but I think people's energy is what attracts. Yeah. I think, some of my friends are really, they're not ready to date, right? Yeah. And you feel it. Their energy is not good. They're still trying to figure out, their divorce and where they are and how they are within their family. And I think the energy part of it is like, even the younger women, I'm always like, you're not going to meet someone right now because your energy, you got to put it out there. And it's hard. Think about it. There's the apps they have to go on, the ghosting they have to deal with, the multiple, and not that people aren't seeing multiple people, but just, it's just a lot. It creates sometimes negativity just to be in the dating world right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like if somebody met their partner in yesteryear, like the old fashioned way before there were apps, they can be really intimidated because there are things that happen on apps that I see all the time, like with clients and with people I work with, that it's like they enter and they're like, oh my God, I've never used an app. Like, how do I set up my profile? And why is it that, I match with people and then they don't write to me? So there's all these weird, I guess, culture related things on apps that people aren't used to when they enter them, and they just have to kind of learn what the culture is.
Well, I do think it goes back to what you just said, energy. I think that's where the apps are so, I can't wrap my head around it because you can look at a picture of somebody. I was having this conversation literally the other day that my friend said she was swiping for somebody and her friend is divorced and she was just doing the app for her. And I said, the problem is you can look at a picture of someone physically and in that picture, you're like, I don't know. Because I think we set these really crazy high standards when we look at a visual image of somebody, right? We're so critical. Oh, I don't like the way his eyebrow is cocked or he has a weird tooth. But the energy that happens when you meet someone, the chemistry you have in person, all of a sudden that person who was maybe a 4 in that picture and you would never swipe for
totally
is a 9 and you've got butterflies because he's got a funny personality. And I think that is, what has completely gone awry in dating. I think that's what's missing.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points here, right? You can meet somebody in person and be like, wow, I'm obsessed with them. But you know what? We never would have matched on a dating app because they don't meet the criteria or the physical standards that I would normally choose. But I also think that our brains pick up on a lot more than we think. So when we look at someone's face on an app, we might think we're being superficial by choosing only the people whose faces we like. But I actually think that's valid and that we're synthesizing little things about who they are by just small minutia about their pictures, the way they're standing.
My girlfriend was like, I don't like his picture. I'm like, so she showed me the picture. I'm like, what do you not like about the picture? For whatever reason, she's like, nah, it's no, I just I think it's a cute picture.
Right. And that's the thing is that those instincts we're kind of taught to say, oh no, don't pay attention to that. But I think they're important because there's things that go beyond what we know about ourselves that our brains and our biology are just picking up on for whatever reason. So I'd say go with your gut. If someone intrigues you, swipe right. And if someone just rubs you the wrong way for whatever reason, then just listen to your gut, because it might be telling you something.
What are some common pitfalls you see newly single people falling into?
I think dating for marriage or dating with too much focus on an outcome is really dangerous, because when you do that, you miss a lot of red flags and you're more likely to just be laser focused on the end result as opposed to just enjoying it. And my feeling and what I've always believed is that dating should be fun. it's an adventure. It's whimsical. You learn about yourself. You have amazing life experiences. And that, if it goes well, can lead to a relationship. But I think, when you're newly single and you're saying, oh my God, I need to date, and you're just kind of focused on this, like, whether it's a profile of someone that you really want or it's like the type of relationship that you want, I think that's destined to end in failure because you're really not enjoying the process. And that's what's going to ultimately kill the vibe anyway.
Yeah. Every time I ended something or someone ended it with me, I always kind of took onus of like, okay, what happened? Like, was it him? Was it me? Was it both? Was it, could I have done this better? Or like you start to, go back and kind of rethink it. I think a lot of women are afraid to get back in the dating because they don't want to be hurt again. They don't want to put themselves out there. Are there any tips that you can give our listeners to like, you just got to get back on that horse. You gotta go.
Yeah. Well, I think fear in dating is totally valid. And it's something that, it's really normal. It's scary to put yourself out there and to say, I'm risking rejection. But I think if you look at it in a way where you can meet some amazing people and just enjoy it for what it is. And if you do encounter rejection, which everybody does, I think it's helpful to look at it as it has nothing to do with me, right? Like you can't, and also people date for many different reasons. Some people are out there wanting to date casually for like forever, right?
Peter Pan, boo.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So it's important to say, if I meet a Peter Pan and he's Peter Panning, it's not my fault if he wants to continue Peter Panning for years and years and years, right?
I know 25-year-olds that are now 55-year-olds and they're still Peter Panning.
Right. So
there's certain red flags. I always say to my single friends, if he is 40 plus and has never shown signs of wanting to be committed to somebody, you ain't changing him.
Right. So it's not
It would be
your
very difficult.
fault. So if you get rejected by a Peter Pan, you can't internalize that and say, oh my God, what did I do wrong? It's like, no, that's, everybody has a life story and they're playing out what their life story is. And so you can't blame someone or blame yourself for them carrying out their life story. They're entitled to do that. And so I think like looking at rejection as not being about you or something that, you did wrong is important because it's not about you at all. It just happens.
What is your take on the idea that it gets harder to date as you get older?
I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy because I actually think it's a lot harder for young people to date today because there's so much pressure from social media and young people these days, I think, are lost they can be lost in terms of figuring out who they really are. But when we as women get into our 30s and our 40s, I feel like that's when we really start developing our confidence. And so we know what our boundaries are and when to say like, oh, that's totally unacceptable behavior for me and I don't need to like let that into my space. That's important. And I think we get those boundaries more as we get older. And
100%.
so we're less likely to be putting up with.
I think also men do as well. And also a man in one relationship can be completely different in relationship
with another woman.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, always don't judge a book by its cover, but like you are different people when you're with different people. I mean, you are. Like I know a friend of mine is now dating another friend's ex and I'm like, they were not good together. These two, they're good together.
Right.
It's like a cocktail. Like they mix well.
I love that.
Me too.
It's like a cocktail.
We hear this from listeners a lot. Everyone good is already taken. What are your thoughts on
that.
this?
So annoying.
But you do hear it. You're like, I mean, I'm sure he's married. I'm sure everyone's married. All your husband's friends are married. All the good ones are taken.
All the good ones are taken. We get it all the time.
They're not all taken. The world is a giant place. There's an abundance of amazing people in the world. And some people like have taken a long time to reach their like ultimate self, right? Or the person that they are today. And they're just reaching that right now. So I think having that kind of attitude is a losing attitude in dating, to go into it with the mindset of like, I'm going to lose. For me, I like to approach things in life, like, I believe in the law of attraction. And I think that when we say, I'm going to do something and it's going to be a positive experience for me, I think that, if maybe this is a little woo-woo, but I've learned this from clients too. When they have a positive attitude, they attract positive people towards them.
That's what we were talking about. We absolutely agree. I think sometimes you get stuck, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard. And it's hard because it is hard.
I think you always gave good advice. Molly has said this, and she said it when we were single, and she says it to our single friends still. You also have to treat dating like a job. I think that there is you have to put the work in, make the effort, go out, and put yourself out there.
And put yourself out there. And the rejection is hard. I mean, I was never a huge dater, but at one point I'm like, well, do I want to get married and have a life and kids? And do I want that path? Again, that's just my path. That's not everybody's path, but
it's not landing in your lap just because
you're always just
you woke up one day
in your lap. And I think a lot of girls kind of let those years go by because they were like, well, I haven't met anybody, but you also have to
try.
I mean, that's why, when we talk about the apps, I say lean in because it's one way, or do a running group, or go after work with your friends at X. When we were having babies, we'd always be like, go to the Cedars-Sinai Starbucks.
And look at those hot doctors.
Of doctors that are single. But again, I do think, not necessarily make it a job, but you also have to get invested.
You have to put the work in.
I totally agree, right? You have to empower yourself. And instead of sitting home complaining and being like, oh, no one's coming to me, this is so hard. Well, what are the steps that you can take to actually better the situation? And instead of, I think people are so easy to say this isn't working for me, but then when you look at what they've actually done, it's like, what have you really done? So I see that a lot too.
How do you stay open to love without feeling desperate or too available? Because there's a fine line.
I think this might sound cliche, but I think it's really important to have a good life and be confident in the things that you do and have passion and just be happy on your own. And it's okay to say, here, I want a partner and here are the things I want, but I think it's not okay to say, I'm not going to be happy unless I have this partner. I think you're more magnetic when you're happy with who you are, but you're also able to establish better boundaries and be a stronger, more compelling version of yourself.
And also, having a little distance and not whether you've been dumped or you don't like what's happened within your divorce or you didn't get the money or whatever happened. I also think you have to separate that and don't bring that into your dating world. Don't bring the, oh my God, he's not a great dad, or he didn't give me any money, or now I have to do X. Be really careful to have those boundaries, not leak into something that he doesn't probably want
don't taint
to be a part of, and I think that is a little bit of pitfalls when people are, dating after divorce. They're bringing in their baggage, and they don't even realize.
Yeah, I think that's really common because people think, oh, this is part of my life story. I can share whatever. We're comfortable with each other. But I would say that's a rule of thumb. If you are dating after divorce, just leave your ex out of it. Don't talk too much about the past because really, your goal on a date isn't to have a free therapy session. You're ultimately trying to find out, you're learning about this person, you're finding about what makes them interesting and connecting on a deeper level. And anything about your past is ultimately going to, I think, hurt that connection.
Do you have a rule with your clients or with yourself? Okay, I've been dating this person for 6 months and then I feel like I can introduce him to my kids. Is there a steadfast, because some women wait, some women don't, they're open, they're really honest with their family, or okay, mom's going to go out. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm quite protective over kids by nature. I have never gotten to that point in my own situation, but I think when it comes to any kids, as a therapist, I know that kids really need stability. And so introducing anyone into their lives is really risky. And so I think it's important that, if this is someone you're introducing them to, that it should be someone that's going to be there for a while. That's a stable relationship and it's committed. So it doesn't mean they can't hear about that person, but actually bringing them into their life is a totally different story,
makes sense.
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, going back to marriage too, I think, listen, we're both married to wonderful men. My husband, I'll speak to him. He's a phenomenal father and a great, great husband. Are there days where I want to fucking kill him? 100%, right?
I do too. Yeah.
And I think
today, but yes.
But I think that, with your clients, when you see people, is there a point, because I think no one's marriage is perfect. And I think that's such a misnomer. I think
people think, oh my God, he checks or she checks every box.
But it's also,
they don't.
I think that what it is that we also live in a world where we put such pressure through social media, through everything. Look at my beautiful life. Look at my perfect family. And I think that creates a lot of insecurities for other people because they see this, they don't understand that that's not reality, 100%. Right? Because no one's life is like that. Right. But for you with clients, when you're, someone comes to you and says, oh, I'm having, God, I just want to kill my husband. I want a divorce. At what point is it that you're saying, marriage is work. It ebbs and flows. There are going to be the peaks and there's going to be the valleys. And right now you might, instead of, this might not be a divorce moment. This might be let's work through this moment because 100%. There is so much love there.
And there are so many moments like that in healthy marriages. And I think that's one thing I have to talk to clients a lot about is to say it's actually really normal for marriages to go through rough patches. And especially if there's kids involved, you're managing a whole business essentially of running your household. So those things can become really exhausting and, everybody has different personalities. And so that's totally normal. I think that the way that I know if this is something that's a serious issue is what's actually coming up and why. Yeah. So if these are things like, oh, we're getting on each other's nerves because we're like ships in the night or whatever you call it, we're not talking and we don't have time to communicate, that's one thing. But when it comes to maybe emotionally abusive language or a lack of communication altogether or someone with more power than the other person in the relationship, that's when I start asking questions and saying, okay, what is this dynamic really like? And are there some toxic traits that there's one person that's actually really suffering in the relationship and it's not right. And relationships can be very damaging for people if they're not in a healthy relationship. So my focus is always on the well-being of both people and making sure that they can both thrive, right? Because both people should be happy and should be able to live their best life in the context of a relationship. And if that's not happening for one or both people, then that's when I start getting in there and asking questions.
That's a really good point.
How long should you talk to someone before meeting up? We get that question a lot. Is there a sweet spot before things fizzle or it gets to, I don't know, pen pally, I guess?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be pen pals. No. I think that's really bad. I think you need to meet as soon as possible, but not, I think for a lot of women, me included, you don't want to meet too soon because then it's almost like, ooh, I haven't talked to this person. I don't really know their vibe. And sometimes language actually can be really indicative of if you will gel. So I actually think texting rapport is important. Yeah. It's not the same
That's so interesting.
It's not the same as in-person rapport, but you kind of have to feel that. I think especially as a woman, when you're vetting people online, you're kind of saying okay, if I have this many people that I'm potentially talking to, who am I going to meet up with? You have to be able to say who do I get the best vibes from? And so I think that is really important. But you definitely don't want to be pen pals because you could talk for 5 months and then meet and
womp.
Nothing. Yeah.
Do you believe that marriage still holds the same value today as it did for previous generations?
No, I don't. Especially for the young generation growing up. And
they're waiting. More and more and more.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of information, the internet, social media, TikTok especially. And I feel like I can really speak to this because I've been talking about relationships online for more than 10 years now. So it started on YouTube and I grew my YouTube really big. And then I went to TikTok and, I have a community of 2 million followers on TikTok. So so I feel like I really know what people are talking about. And when I started talking about relationships 10 years ago, even then the tone was different. And now there's so much information about and enlightenment on gender roles and why some people seek to get married in the first place. And I think what young women are realizing today is, actually, marriage could empower me, but there's also many situations where marriage isn't going to help me, right? It's actually going to trap me. And so I think women's standards for relationships are getting higher because they realize, wow, I can be happy on my own. And I actually don't need the fairy tale to have a well-adjusted, happy life.
Well, that leads me to, because there's a lot of talk on social media about love bombing.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So first of all, what is it? Can you explain to our listeners? And how do you distinguish it from like a genuine affection early on? Because, you get this like, oh my God, like it's all hot and heavy. It's all, and then it's like, and then it's done.
Right. Now, love bombing is very dangerous.
I
So
know.
love bombing is essentially when somebody comes on really strong at the beginning, lots of lovey-dovey texts, maybe some gifts, and they're really smothering you with attention. It's always a red flag in a relationship. So it's usually one of the earliest signs of an abusive relationship or a relationship with a narcissist. So basically what this person is trying to do is win you. And people who have had enmeshed relationships with their parents or have had other toxic relationships usually miss these red flags, and they'll say, oh my God, like I feel like I'm getting so much attention. They're really spoiling me. It feels so good. But what they need to stop and ask themselves is why, right? This person doesn't even know me that well. Why are they obsessed with me, right? So it's important to know that you actually need to earn somebody's trust and affection the same way that they need to earn yours. And that can't happen overnight in a healthy relationship. So it actually does take time. And if someone's like all about you on day one, as much as it's really flattering, it's actually something that you need to like take pause and say, like, this might not be healthy.
So speaking of red flags, what are some universal red flags?
I think generosity is a green flag and any kind of stinginess is a red flag.
Yeah,
I 100%, like if you can't buy me a freaking coffee.
it was a quesadilla.
Or a
It was
quesadilla. We always say like if you can't buy me like a quesadilla, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a red flag. Look, as women, we are more vulnerable in a dating situation because ultimately we're like, if you're dating for marriage and kids, you're ultimately the one that's giving up your body, giving up, like making the ultimate sacrifice for another person. So if they can't buy you dinner, that's a huge red flag. I don't think you're getting a push present if that's the case.
I also think a red flag is ultimately, okay, you want something, you have a timeline. They have a different timeline. And I see women all the time sacrifice their timeline for his timeline.
Right. And that may not even be a red flag about the person, but rather just like the connection that you have. It might not be right. Another red flag I have that I see all the time with clients is that like if someone exerts or if someone is mean to other people, even if they're really, really nice to you and they treat you like a princess, but then you see them like
with waiters,
like unleash on a waiter or their
Oh.
enemies. Like it's like you really want to watch how they treat their enemies. Do they take the high road? Because one day that could be you. Like you could be divorcing this person or you could be ending a relationship and you ultimately don't want to be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So something
And
to
also
watch
don't
for.
get talked into things. Like don't sign anything. Don't like, if you want to have that baby and he doesn't want to, then you need to leave. Like you need to like try to be your own best advocate in what you want in your timeline. And again, it's not that you can't, wait a few months, wait a few years, but you just have to always keep that in the back. I remember because I was a little bit stressed at the end of it. I'm like, I want a family, right? Like, again, I wasn't dating to find that per se, but that's ultimately what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I dated some men who didn't want that at that time. And I, unfortunately I had, it wasn't going to work.
And you have to remember it's your life, right? And just because you meet someone temporarily, I don't think they should have say or like be able to sway what your life direction is.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
sometimes relationships can make us lose touch with who we are and the things that we want. And I would say that's also a major red flag.
Yeah, I agree.
Dating burnout. It's real.
Yeah.
People get burned out. Like, I'm going off all the apps. I'm done. Like, what can you say to those women out there? Like, you're like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm over it. I've got ghosts. Like, whatever the reason is, they're feeling like their self-esteem, like they're feeling bad about themselves. And it has actually probably nothing to do with them. They're just you haven't met your match.
That's so
I know.
normal. But, you know, I think it's okay to take a break from like the formal dating, whether it's on the apps or going to matchmaking events or whatever it is. I mean, those things are all fun, but I think, again, they make dating like this high pressure situation that you really don't need. I would say, like, when you work on yourself and do things that you love and find interesting, it's not about meeting people. It's just about like meeting yourself and honoring yourself, as cliche as that sounds. So I would say, like, take a break, just enjoy your life. And you know, you never know what can happen for yourself, whether in a relationship or not, when you actually just open yourself up to real life.
Why do you think ghosting has become so common? Because it has. I mean, I remember people were like, oh, I saw someone on Saturday night, and I remember like looking at him across his birthday, and I'm like, I was so freaking head over heels that he broke up with me, and I called him back to make sure he had broken up with me. It was a fun moment. But he didn't ghost me, right? He said, I don't want to see you anymore.
Right.
But why now is it so incredibly common to be ghosted?
I think it's because people can.
Right.
And if you lack courage, you're one of the people that may ghost, right? It's really just a lack of courage.
I think it's also a lack of, like, we have so much of our communication now is tied to our phones, to texting, to not in person, right? So it's so much easier to just like delete somebody.
I just find it so incredibly disrespectful.
Oh, totally.
It is. And so incredibly like, I can handle it. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel for some of my friends who are like, just never heard from him again. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think that when somebody does get ghosted for the first time, it shakes them. But I think, again, I have to keep reminding people that, like, this is not a reflection of you.
Right.
Like, this is 100% them having some kind of issue, whether it's Peter Pan or just a lack of courage.
Can't deal with, you know.
And ultimately, you dodged a bullet. Because if they can't have a hard conversation now, imagine if it's like a really hard conversation.
All right, I got one for you. Is dating multiple people at once healthy or just confusing?
I think it's healthy. I think that as long as everybody has communicated their expectations in advance and but also listen to yourself. Like if you're getting super close to someone and you're feeling like, okay, I'm not really wanting to see other people, I think that's also fine. But it's about boundaries and listening to yourself and being open and honest with the people that you're seeing. But I'd say, like, in today's dating culture, it is normal to date multiple people and to kind of learn more about yourself through that process. So absolutely fine.
And when is the right time to ask, what are we? And how do you bring it up without scaring someone away?
I think that asking someone, what are we,
is worst
probably
thing ever.
I'm reading a question here from a listener submitted question.
Okay, listen, no, don't ever ask, what are we? Like,
if you have to ask,
we got a problem, Houston.
100%. I think also I don't want to do anything. So you have to ask me what you have to tell me, or tell me what your vision is, because I don't want to be the one, initiating anything, right? And I think as women, a lot of times we need someone who's very sure of themselves and who sees the vision and can communicate that clearly to us. So I would never want someone that I'm working with to be in a situation where they're wondering, what are we? I think that's, you shouldn't be in that situation.
But I do think communicating, like my husband and I were actually, it was right after Molly's wedding. She got married in Napa. We were dating for 3 months, and we spent 2 nights in San Francisco. And I remember after dinner and a couple of drinks.
And I was so annoyed because I'm like, who is this guy you've been dating for like a hot minute. Second? I was like, he's not coming to my wedding. She's like, but I really like him. I was like, okay.
And so we were in this hotel, and I look at him and I'm just like, just so you know, I'm like not dating to date you. Like, I want to get married and have kids. It was 3 months. And he loves to retell this story. But the reason I always share this story with friends of mine who are either dating or single or whatever, I'm like, here's the deal. When it's the right guy, you're not going to scare him away.
100%.
He did not run for the hills. Did it annoy the shit out of him? And does he still bring it up? Yes. He did.
He was annoyed.
But he also didn't dump my ass.
Right.
3 kids later.
3 kids later.
I love that story.
But I think it's like one of those things that I will say, the right guy, you're not going to scare off. The right 100%. Guy, you're not worried. Why hasn't he called?
And I will tell the listeners that are listening to us right now, you really shouldn't be in therapy while you're dating.
Oh, yeah.
Hear me clearly,
Too
because
soon.
I did it. I did a therapy one time with someone a couple of times. And I was like, what is happening? Like, if it's that hard,
Yeah, it should not.
you know, like how
Exactly.
you said the phrase at the beginning of the episode, you know, when you know, like, you know things. It can't be that hard. And that's what I always tell my friends. I'm like, if it's that hard, I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's working. I don't know if he's seeing you where you are right now or where you're at. Like, and I don't know if you're seeing him where he is.
Yeah.
Like, I see people on that struggle bus before they've even committed. I'm like, oof.
Right. I remember back on my YouTube channel, like 10 years ago, we had a segment called Decode His Texts. And people would literally screenshot their text messages to me and I would decode them. And now looking back, I think it's so ironic because if you're at the point where you're literally screenshotting someone's texts and needing to decode them, like they're probably
It ain't
not
working.
the one.
How many of those people actually got married? Probably none.
Right. It's like if it's that confusing, then it's probably not the right.
Yeah.
How do you know if you're in a real relationship where honestly you're just someone's convenience?
How do you know if you're someone's convenience? I think that's pretty obvious. You know, you're going to know if they're going out of their way to do nice things for you, if they remember the things that you talk about, if they're thoughtful, if they check in with you regularly. I think that if you feel like you're always reaching out to somebody first, that's a big red flag. It's, you know, if they're always reaching out to you after 9 p.m., you know, it might be a booty call, that type of thing. Like, I think it becomes pretty obvious over time, I think, where, you know, you're feeling like you're not getting their energy, you're actually putting more of your own energy out. And
I'm telling
you don't want to be in that.
Especially Scott Stuber, a lot of guys I've dated, the more confidence you have, the better it will go. And those boundaries that you set up in the very beginning are the same boundaries you need while you're married.
Oh, interesting.
I can, you know, if you're the girl who like, oh, I don't care what he does, or, oh, he doesn't have to call me. Fuck that. Yeah, you do. You have to call me. That, like, I know so many girls who are like, I don't want to be like a bother. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
oh my God, girl.
Be a bother.
Be a fucking bother.
Well,
like,
those boundaries are going to stay with you for
those
a long
boundaries
time.
are so, because if you let them get away with murder, they will.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want to be in a marriage is a pushover, right?
Yeah.
Like you really need, I mean, that's the type of situation
Happy
where,
life, happy wife.
yeah, 100%.
Rapid fire, rapid fire, rapid fire.
First date do and don't.
Okay, look hot.
Do look hot.
Do look hot and don't complain about anything.
We complain now. What's one thing you always have in your bag?
Lipstick.
If you weren't a therapist, what would you be doing?
Making videos, viral videos about something.
Best advice you've gotten since you've been separated?
Never listen to what anybody says you should do.
What's your love language?
Physical touch.
Personal relationship deal breaker?
Traditional gender roles.
What's your signature scent?
Haute couture by Givenchy.
Oh, love. What's something you can't live without?
Books.
What's your comfort food?
Snickers bars.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
When someone talks a lot about themselves and doesn't ask a lot of questions.
Have you ever dated a narcissist?
Yeah.
Who hasn't?
Exactly. We always ask everybody before they go, if you could give advice to your 10-year-old self, what would it be?
I would say don't let the opinions of other people and what they think you ought to do with your life impact the decisions that you make. Because ultimately, you're going to want to come back to those decisions, and it's better that you do it sooner rather than later.
You're amazing.
You're awesome.
Kimberly Moffit, she's going to get us through it. You are, honestly, your insight, your energy, it's all the real talk. Make sure and follow her on Instagram and TikTok at Kimberly Moffit. That's KimberlyMoffit. And don't forget to rate and review us. Listen, this episode came from you guys. It came from the listeners. You wanted advice. You wanted this episode. So make sure and
Continue to share
Continue
with
to
us.
share, because it's important that we know what, we can bring, the likes of Kimberly and other great hosts to help, get us through this world, this crazy world that we're living. I'm happy for you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
excited for you.
much.
So good. Make sure and follow us on Instagram and follow Kimberly Moffit.
Yeah.
You're gonna
thank you so
learn.
much for
You're gonna
having
learn a
me.
thing and get hot when you go on that date.
Be
I
hot.
love it.
Don't complain.
Don't complain. Don't complain. We'll see you guys
Thank you
next
so
week.
much.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims and my ride or die, Emese Gormley. We are so excited to bring you guys along on this journey with us. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick on the Rim and at Molly B. Sims. Or you can go to my blog where you can dive just a little bit deeper into my favorite products, trends, and more at mollysims.substack.com. And don't forget to check out our video episodes on my YouTube channel, Molly Sims. This podcast is a production with Sony Music. I wanted to give a special thanks to my team, Rosie Cummings, Kenna Ryan, Sophie Kevorkian, and everyone at Sony Music. Don't forget to listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out on the fun.